Well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I got a really cool question that is going to kind of shake, hopefully, some of your thought process. I know it shook mine because I had this blind spot in my head. And so we're going to unpack this today for you and for me. The question is, does growth always equal increased head count? And when I thought about that, I'm like, well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, how can you sell more, make more, buy more, build more, do more without increasing headcount? And there's no secret AI or there's no secret robots involved. So I just want to put that out up front. But I found somebody that's been able to build some businesses here without increasing headcount. I'm like, I got to learn more about that. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Joel Miller. How are you today, my friend?
Doing great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So you're owner and co-founder of a company called The Sky Floor, which is like a total oxymoron. So first of all, fill us in on what The Sky Floor is, and then I want to learn how you got that name.
Okay, yeah. So it's my identical twin brother and I, and we do digital marketing, but that's like kind of what does that even mean, right? So I think
Yeah.
really the thing that we're honing in on over these last few years is that we're just problem solvers. We're lifelong learners who love to solve problems for people. Usually we use digital tools to do that. But what
Okay.
that means is that we want to be in partnerships with our clients and help them get to their next goal or help them discover what their next goal is, and then test and iterate new ideas to help them get there.
And so how in the world did you get the Sky Floor? Because that to me is like I love it.
Yeah,
I'm
what does
like
that
trying
mean?
to figure there's got to be something there I missed. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if cocktails were involved or what, but it was like, man, where
You
did
know,
this come from?
not that people don't drink under 21, but I think my brother and I maybe invented that name when we were like 18 or 19. So I don't
Okay.
think cocktails were involved. But
Okay.
what it means to us is that there's this idea of like you can get in at the ground floor of something, and then there's the sky's the limit. And so we were like, well, it's kind of a fun oxymoron or a new way of looking at it to say, what if the sky is just the beginning? We can actually go up from where the limit used to be.
Wow. Cool. Well, I love it. It's definitely catchy. And then you also have theskyfloor.com. So we'll talk about that a little bit today. So as we like to start out in these discussions, Joel, there's a ton of people from around the world that are listening right now, and they really envy what you've done. And for you especially, because as we prepared for the show, you said that your corporate America stint lasted exactly 9 months. So that's pretty rare. Most people have a longer stint in that. So, what did you do for those 9 months? And then how did you transition from there into owning your own business?
Sure. So that was right after high school, and the upfront maybe admission, or maybe it's a badge of honor, to me it is. We didn't go to college, actually. We went to a college prep high school and then sort of
Sure,
bucked the trend. We kind of ruined their stats by saying we may not go to
sure.
university or to college. And so we worked at my brother and I both did this. We worked at Apple Computer in retail for
Okay.
9 months, which was super great. I mean, some of the sales lessons I learned there I still use. So I give them lots of credit. They're it was a great company to work for. I just fully learned in that experience. I don't love being managed, and I also really don't like corporate speak, which is in
Sure,
the retail environment there. At least it was in 2003. And
sure.
so, like a quick side story on that is, they would constantly say, "We want you to have ownership over what you do here,"
Yeah,
and then I would come up with ideas of things we could do on the floor in the store to make it a better experience for the customers. And they're like, no,
yeah,
we don't
yeah.
actually want you to do that. I
Sure.
realized, oh, you don't mean actual ownership as in
Yeah,
responsibility.
yep.
And
Just kind
so,
of ownership,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
right. That drove me nuts. I think I wrote the manager a paper when I left to get a window
Oh,
into my
wow.
brain about
Sure,
why people like me can't work in an environment like that for too long.
sure, sure. Wow. Well, that's like being kind of pregnant. We always laugh about that. It's like, but I think it's interesting, Joel, because we do a ton of work with DISC, the personality
Yeah,
profile.
yeah.
to help companies and teams and individuals. And I think if we read your assessment, it would say in there things like you prefer to be the leader, you do struggle working with under other people. So I just want to kind of acknowledge that it's not necessarily for anyone listening if they can identify with what Joel's saying. It's not a negative, it's just how you were created. It was how you were
Right.
built. So I think the earlier you kind of grasp onto that, the
Right.
better. I'm guessing you would have really struggled if you would have tried to fit that square peg in that round hole and just continued on. That would have been a real challenge for you, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, I 100% agree. And it doesn't mean that you can't be a collaborator if you're that sort of personality. I love
Right.
collaborating with people. I think the difference becomes I need my voice to be heard. My ideas need to have weight in the
Yep.
marketplace. And so that was the thing that I felt was lacking there. And it just like, all right, that's fine. It's maybe just not a fit
Sure.
for me.
So you make the decision that this corporate stint of 9 whole months, and congratulations, I'm in the same camp as you. I ended up making it a year in college, and I'm like, I have no clue what I'm doing, and I love to sell, so I jumped into a sales
Yeah.
role, and shortly thereafter bought the company, and it was just a great journey. But it was one of those scenarios that I totally agree with you that, it's not for everybody, and we're not here to say college is good, bad, right, or wrong,
No, it's very specific.
right?
Yeah.
It just wasn't for us. So you're 9 months in, you decide, oh my gosh, this is not for me. What was like the next step? Because this is where I think a lot of people, Joel, get stuck, whether they're 20 or 50. They're like, man, I'm not happy. I'm discontented with what I'm
Yes.
doing. I feel like I could create a better life for myself and my family. I just don't know what that next step is. What was it for you?
Well, and it'd be great to sort of skip ahead in the story and then falsely, I think we all experience this false impression of because we collapse our histories, right? So we get this false impression that there's like this one moment and then the next moment, and then you're off sailing into the thing I talk
Right?
about now. Not
Yep.
like that at all for me, right? It's a journey. It really is. And so if you're listening and you're like, I don't want to give anybody the impression that there's not a lot of steps and you're not wrong for not having taken the next step necessarily. For
Sure.
us,
Yep.
we were already working for ourselves a lot on the side. Our dad was an entrepreneur. He was a director of
Okay.
photography. Our grandpa owned a store in State Street, downtown Chicago, and then moved it to Rancho Mirage, Palm Springs, California. So I don't know if it's in the DNA or what it is, but there's just like this built-in idea of
Sure.
you can produce value for people and kind of carve your own way. And
Yeah.
so as we're doing that, people start asking more questions. Hey, can you do this type of work? Can you do this kind of work? And we were doing some other things like pursuing some music things too on the side. We were in LA for a
Okay.
while.
Sure.
And as it sort of like I met my wife in about I think what was it? I guess 2008, and I was coming back to Chicagoland with her, and my brother was already back here, and we were like, we've always been doing this kind of stuff. People are asking for more and more work. Why don't we
Yeah.
make this a business? So it was very organic. It wasn't. We
Nice.
weren't visionaries in that
Sure.
moment. Going, I know exactly how this turns out in 17
Sure.
years.
Yep.
But yeah,
Wow, that's pretty cool. Well, and I think you bring up something that you breezed by, and I want to go back to.
yeah,
You surrounded yourself, whether on purpose or because of family, with people that had that mindset. And I
right.
think mindset here is really important because if you're listening and you're surrounding yourself with people that are trying to keep you in, push your dreams down, don't give you that freedom to try things. I think that's going to be a real challenge because, Joel's family, his dad and his grandpa were involved in being an entrepreneur. So it was kind of natural. If
Right,
your dad and your grandpa would have been corporate America,
right.
junkies, and that's where they would have been, do you feel like you would have had this much freedom to jump in and try this? Or where do you think you'd be today if that wasn't a path that they took?
It's so hard to know, but I would guess,
Sure.
I would guess that you're right. I mean, we model the things that we see around us as
Yep.
possibilities. And so
Yep.
seeing that is possible to work for yourself, to be successful by your own definition, because I think that's important,
Yeah.
and to kind of carve out the life that you want, made it so that one, we saw that as possible. And two, there was not like a family expectation of what are you gonna,
Yeah.
don't
Well,
do
that's
that.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like you don't. I mean, I
Yeah.
think there was a moment where my grandparents were a little bit disappointed that we didn't go to college. I don't think
Sure.
that didn't last as they
Yep.
saw
Yeah.
that we actually were successful in carving our own way. But
That's pretty cool. Well, and I know like before I wrote my book, I had somebody ask me if how many authors that I had in my phone, and I said,
yeah,
right, you, the guy I was talking to, was one. He said until you get five, and I don't know if five was the magic number, or if it was just a figurative thing. He said until you get five authors in your phone that you can call, you'll never do this. And I
mm.
remember like trying to find people. Hey, are you an author? And but I love that because it's exactly what happened with you is you surround yourself with people
right,
that will support you and will encourage you. So for the listener, if all the people around you are keeping you, holding you back, you may want to consider rethinking that strategy. And again, I'm not telling you what to do. I just know what worked for me, and it's aligning with what worked for Joel. So I love that piece. So thanks for sharing that. So you guys decide, there's a need, and this is another point that I think is really important is sometimes people find a need and then they meet it and that's what builds their business. Other times they think that if they build it, you will come type of thing. And I'm not
right.
here again to say which is right or wrong. You guys just happen to be in that space. So kind of fast forward because for 17 years it's just been you and your brother. I
Yep.
mean, is there been a temptation to add staff, try to build and make yourself this big conglomeration? Is that something you have to push down, or is it just come natural for you guys just to stay at the pace that you're at?
We've had to push it down in the past, and it's because of this. When we were younger and just carving our way at the beginning of this, we had a lot of older agency owner friends
Okay.
who were constantly asking that question. They might check in occasionally and say, "Oh, what's your revenue at now?" And we would say, "Oh, hit this."
Yeah.
Once we hit the first couple of multi six figures, and they're like, "Well, when are you going to hire someone?"
Yeah.
And you start to think, "Well, that's what they did? Is that what I have to do?" But
Right.
for us, we were looking at those same friends, and COVID only amplified this, looking at
Sure.
how their businesses ran and starting to realize I don't want to be in the glorified temp agency business, which is how I see the traditional agency model, which is
Sure.
I'm going to hire practitioners. I'm going to try, I have my, the economics of it. So I pay them this much per hour and I hopefully charge the client this much. And I'm nickel and diming my clients usually because I have to make
Yeah.
sure I cover every hour my employees are
Sure.
working. And
Sure.
all of that, we're just like, this doesn't really look desirable to us. Like,
Yeah.
we'd rather be solving our clients' problems and in relationships and partnerships and conversations with them directly. And so
Yeah.
it transitioned quickly from a something that we were stuffing down to a choice that we were making.
Well, and I think it went for people that have this mindset that they want to scale, have to scale, they have this where it's just automatic, especially in a service spot like you're at and that I'm at. I think of it this way, Joel, and I think to myself, if you were a client that I wanted to work with and you and I met and you needed some business growth strategies and you and I spark up a relationship and then you're like, yeah, I'd like to enlist your services. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, great, Joel. Let me introduce you to Fred. Fred's going to be the guy that's going to work with you. I feel like and again, for people listening that do that, I'm not saying it's wrong.
Right.
It for me, it just felt like really kind of like fake because you and
Mm-hmm.
I established this relationship. Conversely, the other way, if I wanted to come to you for some marketing help
Right.
and then you hand me off to somebody else after you and I have established a relationship, I feel like that's where a lot of customer experience really drops
Right.
because you had it way up here and you had me just I love the experience you were providing and then you introduced me to your Fred. And sorry for any Freds that are listening, no
My
offense.
son's name is Fred, so it's like
Oh,
really
oh my gosh,
triggering.
sorry, Fred. I'm sorry, man.
No, that's good.
No
That's good.
offense. We'll try and do what's it? Henry. How about Henry? Do you have a
Perfect.
Henry?
Henry. No, no,
Okay.
Henry's off the
So,
table.
so all of a sudden Henry is like taking over your account or my account, and it just didn't feel
Yeah.
right. So, did that have a play in it for you as well, that kind of handoff on how hard that might be?
Oh, 100%. I think that we have the year-long initial contract for most of the agencies of a certain size just because of that. Because they get the client gets excited about the owners or the people they're
Yeah.
talking to at the highest
Yep.
level. And then they're like, great. And they sign on, but then they need to sign on for a year so that they can end up in a Stockholm syndrome with the rest of the team because because they're
Sure.
invariably
Yep.
going to only talk to the people they started with when there's issues.
Yep.
The
Yeah.
rest of it is junior employees, which can work and they're sometimes great, but also I see a lot of turnover in those
Yeah.
positions.
Yeah.
So and that's another thing we didn't want to do. I want to have that continuity with my client so that I know three website designs ago what worked and what didn't work, and we can move on from that instead of having to re-assimilate to a new project manager or designer or
Yeah.
developer on their end every 18 months or 2 years. That's just
Yeah.
not appealing to me.
Absolutely. Hey, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to kind of unpack that more because I feel like a small agency has some advantages over some of these large agencies. And you hit a couple, and we'll talk about a couple more, but we'll be right back. Welcome back. Honored to be hanging out with Joel Miller, the owner and co-founder at The Sky Floor. Love that name. And thanks for hanging out with us. And we're in the middle of this discussion about, does growth always equal an increased headcount? And again, as I mentioned earlier, I had to say that was like a blind spot for me. And I feel like some people sell, like as, oh, we have this huge agency, like that
Yeah.
can be an advantage. I'm guessing also when someone comes to you and say, hey, we're a small boutique or whatever words you use, we only take on certain clients and the owners are actively involved. What are some of the other advantages that you guys bring as a small firm to somebody, whether it's a large company, small company, it doesn't really matter. What are some of those advantages?
Yeah, we already touched a little bit on the trust piece, but I'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah,
Um, which is just that I think that the because I really believe that a client agency relationship has to be a partnership for it to be successful. So there has to be the ability for real honesty, and then and that's on both sides. Like I have to be able to come to the client and say, remember that idea I had? We tried it and it's not working.
sure.
So, and I'm not just sitting there trying to spin everything because I need to
Right,
protect the contract because I have so much overhead
right.
to manage, all those things. So I just think it increases the trust between the client and the agency in that partnership or us. And
Yeah,
then I also think just being nimble is a huge thing.
sure.
When there's a multi-tiered agency model and a client comes up and they're like, we have this idea and it's timely. The reality is a
Yeah,
lot of times, especially if the client load is big at the agency, you're the shortest you might get something out there is 10 days
yeah,
because it has to go through the creative director and then down to the designer. And then you have an email
sure.
guy, an ads guy, a web guy, and all of them have to get the same picture. And I often
Yeah,
say, like, I see that work like a game of telephone. Speaking of Fred, speaking of the kids,
sure.
they get around
Uh-oh.
that table, and it starts with one phrase, and by the end, it's like it always ends as potty talk.
Yeah,
And it
yeah,
kind of happens in the agency world too. So I just think of
sure,
those two things: trust and the ability to be speedy for them in a
sure.
way that we can because it's just us.
Well, and I'm guessing nimble companies also can turn on a dime when when an industry changes,
Right.
when there's a quick change. I mean, you said 10 days, I was thinking 10 months,
It depends on, yeah,
or,
yeah, right.
18 months where it's like, man, we try to do these little course corrections and it's just so hard to
Yes.
shift because our mindset's been that way. I mean, the other thing too that I think of for your perspective is you guys are so creative in what you do. I
Yeah.
don't have that creative juice. I have other juices that I use, but the creativity piece, I rely on people like you to be able to do that. And
Right.
if today you were the creative guy on our team, and then tomorrow, you
Yes.
were gone because you were a rep and you went to get, $1 more an hour down the street, I feel like that whole energy that
Yeah.
whole culture, that there's a pretty big shift there. So that's got to be a huge advantage as well, is this continuity and consistency throughout a campaign, throughout a relationship. Is that, do people have different energies and different creativities? And is that something that's accurate, do you think?
Oh, it's definitely accurate. I mean, and we've seen this firsthand because we had actually our single biggest client right now. We started with just doing their website 7 or 8 years ago. Then they
Okay.
left to go to, because they were like, we need a more full service agency. They said, it's
Sure.
fine. You know, we're big on no hostage situations. We we don't hold all the pieces and say you can't have any of it. We're like, we'll transition you. We talk to the new agency. There's no point in burning bridges or being mad, and it's always worked out for us
Sure.
having that attitude. So they do that for 18 months, and things are just kind of tanking, going into the ground. And part of it is that they didn't have that continuity among that team at that agency of the creativity and thought process and collaboration of a few people who are traveling along with them in those 18 months. It was
Sure.
switching around so much. There's so much
Yeah.
context switching that
Yep.
they couldn't actually execute on the bigger picture. And so they came back
Yeah.
to us, and now we've been working with them for 3 years and have had just incredible results together. But that's one of the things they report back to me is they just love that we have that continuity of
Sure.
collaboration and creativity.
Yeah. Well, and I love that no hostages, because I've seen it in for my clients, and I've seen it in my world where somebody has, a password and they aren't going to, or ownership of a site or whatever, and they just refuse to relinquish that.
Yeah.
Obviously, nobody wins in that scenario. They feel like they win, but realistically, it is a hostage situation. And as soon as you can get out of it, that's the sad part, is you see these migrations like that. So
Right.
there's definitely something to be said for that. Was there one or two secrets that you have that you feel comfortable sharing with people on how you were able to do profitable growth without the scaling? Because I think we've intrigued people, but I think they're like looking
Yeah, the
for
nuts
some
and bolts.
actuality. Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you have
yeah.
any nuts and bolts? And if they're really trade secrets, Joel, we'll do the Men in Black pen on them, and they'll forget everything. But I just didn't know if there were any things that you had as you've seen how that profitable growth happens without scaling.
Right. Yeah, the single biggest unlock for us was just getting out of any kind of hourly billing mindset. And it just felt
Okay.
like that was the way you did it. And everyone's asking that question when you're starting out and you're young. What's your hourly rate? What's your hourly rate?
Yeah.
And it just like, coming every job that I ever looked at up until that point kind of had that notion in it too. And so it just seems natural. And then a lot of
Sure.
agencies, even though they're mature, do that as well because they're doing like a time and cost thing a lot of the time because they want to make sure they can pay for the hours that they have to
Sure.
pay their employees. Well,
Yep.
getting out of that mindset and just going like, okay, what are we actually providing here? Realizing that people aren't, they're paying for the outcome and the value I'm providing to them. And I better be able to demonstrate what that is. And so as soon as I started developing that skill of identifying what outcome we're heading towards, what the actual profitability for them will be, we started being able to command bigger prices for projects to
Sure.
get out of the conversation about how long it's taking me or how I even do it, right? No one's asking that anymore. They don't care because they trust me. And we build that from step one. And so yeah, it's really just comes down to that, just understanding.
Wow.
And it's very like what does that mean? I guess the biggest thing if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't even know how I would do that. The first thing I
Sure.
would say is like stop trying to in initial conversation, stop trying to tell them all the things you can do because you're a pro, which is
Yeah.
such a tempting thing to do. and and dig into who they are, what their problems are, what their pain points are. If you can get them to talk for 70% of the call, they'll actually walk away thinking you're a genius, even though you didn't say
Yeah.
anything or prove it. And so
Right.
uh
That's
it
all the best, right? When you say
right.
nothing and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this was such a great hour of time," or
Yeah,
whatever. Yeah, I
right,
love
right,
that.
exactly. And then
Yeah.
and you're asking those why questions and digging back the layers. And if you peel back the onion layers enough, maybe you find something that they're crying about
Yeah.
and they didn't even know it.
Right.
And that's going to be the
Yep.
secret to to delivering high value to them that they're willing to pay a lot for. And of course you have to execute on it. So this isn't just a
Sure.
con man's job, but
Yep.
if you
Yep.
can do those things, you can increase your prices every year, and actually not, it doesn't even mean you're hustling harder. I mean, I'm working
Sure.
less now than I was 16 years ago. And
Right.
yeah.
That's so cool. Well, I tell you, that is a huge mindset shift right there, Joel, moving from hourly billing away. And I think it really dials into the pain piece that you said, because if you uncover somebody's pain, all of a sudden the dollars and cents kind of goes away a little bit.
Yeah.
Some of my listeners and watchers know that back in September of 25, I had a heart attack
Mm.
followed by quadruple bypass. And it was so weird because it wasn't like I always envisioned it being like Fred Sanford on Sanford and Son, Elizabeth, it's the big one type thing, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have that, but I knew something was wrong.
Mm.
And so I asked my wife to take me to the emergency room. And it was funny because they take my blood pressure, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, sir, you're having a heart attack right now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, just give me some Tums and send me home, right? I had this idea.
Right.
But the one thing I didn't do was I wasn't like, hey, how much are your x-rays? How much
Yep.
is the emergency room cost? Cost when there was pain,
Yes.
if we do this right, and again, we're not, like you said, taking advantage of people, but when
No.
somebody's in pain, literal, figuratively, when their business is in pain, especially like for you, the phone's not
Yeah.
ringing.
Right.
Okay, that's a big pain. I got to market, I got to get my message out there. I feel like the dollars and cents kind of go away, like you said, when you show that you're able to fix that. And when the doctor came in and said, hey, I've done 860 some, open heart surgeries before, he's like, does that make you feel better? Because I'm like, dude, I'm scared to death right now. I
Right.
haven't ever been to, last time I was in the hospital, I had my tonsils out when I was 6. So I'm like, I'm not used to this. So I'm like scared to death. He shares with me, I did 800 and some of these. Does that make you feel better? I'm like, well, a little bit, but still. But I
Yeah.
think that's really for the listener, find some pain for your customers, for your prospects, because if you do not, it comes down to is dollars and cents. And did you start at dollars and cents and work your way away? Is that kind of what you meant by you were hourly billing and then you went by project? How long did
Exactly.
that take? How long was that transition for you?
I think front to back, the full transition was probably 5 years from
Okay,
realizing that we needed to get away from it. And that's
gotcha.
because we, when you start off with that conversation, and we have, I was looking it up before this call, and
Yeah.
our average client has been with us for 5.5 years, and our
Wow.
longest client is 11 of 17 years. So we've
Nice.
got, we truly have long-term relationships.
Sure.
Well, what that means, and actually I just identified it, the people who were into the hourly billing mindset with us, it took a while to either convince them that it made sense to move away from that model because they're so used to it, or
Yeah.
to just move on from them because
Sure.
they couldn't get their heads around how that works, because they're a little, honestly, a lot of the clients, we don't talk with them anymore really, or I filter them out really well. I'm not sure which one, but they people who are obsessed with the hourly billing tend to be scarcity mindset
Sure.
people in the
Yeah.
business world, in my experience. And so they've convinced themselves that if the hourly rate makes sense, that they're getting value from that,
Sure.
because whatever arbitrary metric they have in their mind, I don't actually
Yeah.
know how that makes sense. But so anyway,
Well,
it took a while to like move those people along. So we had
sure.
like a mix for a while, people who we were still making these hourly invoices
Okay.
for, which
Yep.
was such a
Yep.
point that, a pain at a point where you're like,
Yeah.
I have to justify this when this other person's just trusting that it's valuable to them and they're profiting from it.
Yeah. Well, and it feels like the attorney world where your billing comes down to every 6 minute
Oh
increments,
yeah, right.
and it's got to be so. And I don't know any solution to an attorney necessarily. I'm not here to say it's
No,
a wrong way to do it. It was just like, and then you start thinking about like, do I chart if an attorney's thinking about,
right.
your case and not actually reading a book or sitting there. I mean, I'm just
Yes.
driving thinking about that case. Can I bill that 6 minutes?
All
I
right.
mean, it gets to be just such a pain. So I appreciate that you shared that piece. So that's awesome. A couple questions as we start to land the plane today.
Yeah,
Joel, this is like a what if question. If you happen to join a struggling company
right.
as their CMO, their chief marketing officer, like what would be some of the first things that you would look at? What are some of the first things that you would consider changing for anybody for that particular company that you jumped into?
Sure. I have 5 questions
Perfect.
that I would pull out. So the first one is, what's the actual offer? Because a lot of struggling companies we've come into have a positioning problem, and it's dressed up as a marketing problem. So they think I just need more ads or I need to get more audience, but really they
Okay.
can't explain what they do in a sentence and the pain points they're trying to solve. So they've been,
Sure.
I like to call it being accidentally successful. They've been a lot of
Okay.
times very successful, but
Yeah.
they don't actually haven't identified what they're actually offering and why people have been attracted to it up until this point. Um,
Sure.
then two, I would say, where does trust already exist? So looking at their existing customers and the relationships, see if there's anything that hasn't been activated or realized there that, or maybe there's money on the table because they're trying to build a new audience when there's actually some available movement in the relationships they already have.
Sure.
Then look at, whereas if there's a conversion gap, where's the conversion gap? So if there's traffic they're not capturing, leads they're not following up with, see if there's any proposals or relationships that have gone cold. We see this all the time. There's a client right now that we're working on a new strategy for them to follow up on dead leads or even proposals that have gone out, and their sales team hasn't had a system to follow up on them. And it's just
Yeah.
like, that's money on the table. Every time we reach out and try to activate those people, we get 25 to 35% of them saying yes. And all they needed was a reach out.
Wow.
Then looking at the actual sales conversation. So what we can't, it doesn't matter if you get more audience if your sales conversation is broken. So,
Sure.
and I think that's marketing. Some people look at marketing very myopically, and I'm like, marketing is everything that's outward facing. It's the delivery on the promises you're making, and
Sure. Okay.
then there's strategies and places that ends up. So, what's your sales conversation? Can it be improved and optimized? And then
Yeah.
finally, what stories do you have that you're not telling? So, you have successes, even if you've been accidentally successful. You have successes with clients, and I want to identify those and push those out into the world so that people actually know that you have actively solved problems for other people. But I want to do it in
Wow.
those orders because I want to, like,
Sure.
foundationally, work through that, because it doesn't matter what the sales conversation is if we don't know what your offer is.
Well, and that's fantastic. Those are five great questions for anybody that is thinking about if you're not where you want to be, and struggling might not be the right word. Some
Right.
people, have a hard time with that. That's fine. If your sales, if your company, if your margins, whatever, are not where you want them to be, then consider these questions. What's the offer? Where's the trust? Where is the conversion gap? Talk about your sales conversation, and then what stories are you not sharing? Those are the cool part about those is a lot of those don't even take money to
No.
do. That's we pride ourselves in trying to solve problems for our clients without investing money. And let's face it, sometimes entrepreneurs would rather spend money because it's easier to throw money at something than, oh my gosh, I gotta ask my client I gotta ask my team these questions, I gotta do research. I mean, it's
Right.
time is again sometimes worse. um but like, I think when I wrote Growing on Purpose, it was because I ran into a bunch of companies that grow by mistake.
Yes.
And, it's like you ask them, how did you get here? They're like, I don't know. I just kind of got here, right? And I only care because I want you to be able to duplicate that for
Right.
future. And they're like, how do we duplicate that? And they don't know the answer to that. So I love that, those five questions. Those are really helpful and powerful. So again, for the listener, run through those questions, replay this, stop right here, whatever you need to do, but write those down. And then this is really the impetus for being able to see your changes in your business.
Yes.
And especially, from Joel's perspective, the marketing side, Again, he takes it as a much wider version where you're into the sales piece, you're into the culture because you're talking about stories that you're not sharing, and trust and culture and engagement. There's a ton of stuff there, which we talk about every week. So thanks for sharing those. What would your tip of the day be as we land the plane today? Joel, maybe it's something that we did talk about that you want to just reiterate. Maybe it's something that we haven't talked about yet, but what would your tip of the day be today?
Yeah, I hope that there's someone listening who's in this exact moment and know that it's relatable. But the
Yep.
moment is here. It's if you tonight after your doom scrolling session is over and you have that moment of free time and you're like, I'm gonna work on that idea, that business idea I have. Don't go back to your Claude or Chat GPT and ask for another round of prompts to add another 10 pages to the business plan you generated last week.
Yeah.
Put that down and go take the first step, or ask the AI what is the first step and then do that this weekend. So stop. I know it's easy to get stuck in thinking planning is doing, but you
Yeah.
actually have to start doing it. And I want to activate someone who wants to start an entrepreneurial journey and is stuck in that planning mode. Go do it. Go
Yeah.
start something.
Well, my parents told me, don't just stand there, do something, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I don't know if, I mean, there's so many ways to take that, but it was like, yeah, I think that sometimes we have this analysis or paralysis by analysis where we just sit and, especially now, like you said, you could go to Chat GPT and you can type in pretty much anything and pages upon pages of stuff come out
Right. And it's going to be
unless
pretty
you're
good, but you got to do something about it, you know?
right, exactly. And that's the hard part is that first step. And so that's why, again, don't feel like growth equals an added headcount, whether you're in a new company or you're in an existing company or there's a company in your head. I mean, I know when we started Positive Polarity 14 years ago, I did the invoicing, I did all the stuff because it was just me. And then so I didn't even think about hiring at first until I was able to get this thing up and running. And then we hired as we needed. So um, that's so cool. This has been, man, this has really been helpful. I appreciate your vulnerability today. I love the fact that there's still two of you. Is that the plan moving forward, or is there eventually going to be 150 people working at the Sky Floor?
There will probably never be 150 people working at the Skyfloor in this iteration.
Yeah.
We're always exploring new ideas. We're actually restarting an old startup right now with some other partners who are there.
Okay.
They were agency owners, and we had a project, and it did some business. But we're thinking, hey, let's take another stab at that. And so there's other things on the horizon. But the Skyfloor as a marketing agency, it's going to be Alan and Joel Miller.
Awesome. If people are listening and they want to learn more about you, they have a question for you, something we talked about today, maybe marketing related, social media related, anything that side related, or they want to further ask you about your journey, and maybe they would love to learn on how you did something. What's the best way for people to connect with you, Joel?
The best way is to go to theskyfloor.com and you'll find blog posts and other resources. And there's a start now button if you want to start a conversation. That's hit that up. You can get right on my calendar and let's talk.
Awesome. So rather than jumping into your next podcast for the listener, rather than just putting this down and getting into your next activity, I just want to encourage you to just take a minute and just think about what we talked about today. What was one thing that really helped you? And like Joel said, don't just stand there. Do something with it. Maybe it is going to theskyfloor.com. Maybe it's clicking that button just to have a quick conversation with Joel. Maybe it has nothing to do with Joel or Dave. We're fine with that. All we want to do is be the impetus for you so that at the end of this episode, you are better than when you came into this episode. If that is the case, then our mission has been accomplished today. And if not, please reach out to Joel, reach out to me. We don't like to see people floundering. And as many people have done this entrepreneurial journey successfully, there's no reason that you have to flounder anymore. So rather than go to ChatGPT, go to theskyfloor.com, or reach out to Joel, reach out to me. We love to help any way that we can. So Joel, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Hopefully somebody is again taking this to heart and they are just getting the courage up to click that button and talk with you, learn more about your journey, or maybe they just needed this as a kick in the shorts, so to speak, to get that moving forward. So thanks for hanging out with us, and can't wait to see your next ventures. If they're as successful as the Sky Floor, then we're going to be talking again about some more stuff. So again, thanks for hanging out with us today.
It's my pleasure.